Glad to be with you. Glad for these new beginnings here at Unity Church Austin. And you know that all that happens in us individually and all that happens us in community really is the result of prayer consciousness. It is the result of that uplift that we are willing to open to with Spirit and that we are willing to cooperate with. And so all that is this community, all that it has been, all that it is, and all that it is becoming is, and the bottom line is the result of prayer consciousness. And I know that there are some powerful prayers here. We all are, and there are people here who truly hold that high watch. And that is such a joy, such a wonder. And we're all invited into that. So I hope that as the prayer class on Sunday mornings is established, I hope that you'll get up early enough. I know it's Sunday morning, but to be here at 9:30 to share with Carol's prayer class, and also the Monday night healing sessions, which I hear are wonderful. And there's also on Wednesday nights, we'll see what that works out, but at Wednesday nights there's a meditation session also here, and there's something on Tuesdays. What was that? I forgot. The book study, yes, the book study, and that's going to be great too with the Walter Starkey and It's All God books. So all of these things, and the prosperity class that will be starting next Wednesday on Wednesday nights. It'll be a 4-week class. So I hope you'll come to that. And I want you to know that I know good and well that prosperity is not magic. So this isn't going to be any magic tricks like say a few words and poof, you become a millionaire. That's not what it's about. But I'll tell you my prosperity stories and how I have learned and worked with that myself and have learned how to shift my consciousness in many ways, and I still work on that and share that with you. So it's real practical, feet on the ground, not about how can I acquire more things, but how can I develop a greater consciousness and truly understand that God is my source. And what does that mean to live from that place, to live out our divine destiny? And that truly is how we prosper, when we participate in life. So hope you all these things and many opportunities, the women's group, lots of opportunities here at Unity Church Austin. So hope you'll take advantage of those and see what there is for you, and there'll be more coming. So with that, let's just take a moment to center in again in prayer into that inner Christ. And Mother, Father, God, we know that it is not our outer selves, but that it is you within us, through us, and as us that does the work. You are the teacher, and so we give thanks. Amen. All right. So here's our affirmation, and I'm going to be a little tricky with it today. Okay? So let's affirm this. We've got a bee stuck on that honey jar. So the words are, I know God lives within me. So let's affirm that together. I know God lives within me. Now, this time we're going to affirm it, and then I'm going to add something on to the end there, which isn't on the slide, and that is all the time. Okay? So let's affirm this together. I know God lives within me all the time. Now I'm going to add another phrase after all the time. Are you ready for this? Okay. No matter what. Okay? So and remember, we affirm not to make things true, but because they are true. Okay, we're aligning our minds with that. So let's affirm this with the 2 add-ons. You have to help me remember them. Okay, here we go. I know God lives within me all the time, no matter what. Okay, you believe that? Not so sure. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that. Okay, okay, here we go. I've got a little ditty for you. I didn't write this. I love this. This is fun. Okay. He was just a little boy on a week's first day. He was wandering home from Grandma's house and dawdling on the way. He scuffed his shoes into the grass. He found a caterpillar. He found a fluffy milkweed pod and blew out all the filler. A bird's nest in a tree overhead, so wisely placed on high, was just another wonder that caught his eager eye. A neighbor watched his zigzag course and hailed him from the lawn, asked him where he'd been that day and what was going on. I've been to Grandma's house, he said, and turned a piece of sod. He picked up a wiggly worm, replying, I've learned a lot about God. Very fine, the neighbor said, for a boy to spend his time. If you'll tell me where God is, I'll give you a brand new dime. Quick as a flash, the answer came, nor were his accents faint. I'll give you $1, mister, if you can tell me where God ain't. So who are we more like, the man or the little boy? Well, most people, most of us, myself included, if it's a good day, we're like that little boy, right? If things went right at work, or if things are going well with our family, with our children or our grandchildren, or whatever, where it's all good, and we're like that little boy, and we just see our good. We see God's presence everywhere. But if it wasn't so good, if we had a rough day at work, we got frustrated, weren't getting along, with people there, or the customers were annoying, or whatever, or if we are concerned about our health, or if it seems like that, things aren't going so well with that, or we've got some concerns about our children or our grandchildren, then we can be like that man, right? And we'd give $1 million if we could get God to show up, right? If I could only get God to show up. Where are you, God? Where are you? Where are you? But what we know is that if we are basing how we're feeling, whether we experience our good or don't experience our good, if we're basing it basically on what we're seeing happen out there, or what seems like is happening to us, or what's going on out there, look out, right? Because life is a roller coaster, and we're going up and we're going down, and it's like having a tiger by the tail and, being just dragged through the jungle there. Because life is going to slap us around if that's where we're basing our sense of ourselves and our sense of whether or not God is present. Now, that's part of the human experience. We all do it. And what we know that when we grow and develop ourselves spiritually, when we become more aware of our true identity, more aware that God lives within us and God lives within everybody. God lives within this whole world. The whole world is an expression of that life force. What begins to happen to us is that we live more like that little boy, don't we? All the time, that we begin to see, no matter what's happening in the world, in the wider world, no matter what's happening in our individual lives or the lives of those that we care about, we know indeed that God is everywhere, and that at any given moment, in any given circumstance, that we absolutely have the ability to open our minds, open our hearts, and experience what is, which is that power and that presence of God. God never abandons us. That's impossible. And we don't ever really abandon God. That's impossible as well. But what does happen is that we may not be aware of God. We may be walking around in paradise, which we are, and just sort of not noticing. You ever done that? Sure, we all do it. It's part of that human experience where we're learning to integrate the human and the divine. What does it mean to live in that place? What does it mean to live in that place? So how do we do that? How do we live more like that little boy? A couple things I want to talk about with that. It really has to do overall with how we understand the difficulties in life. So the first thing is, what do we think about the permanence of difficulties? You ever thought about that? Do you think, and I won't ask for a show of hands here, but do you believe that whatever stuff is going on, whatever difficulties you have, that you are just stuck with them? That there's no solution, it's just the way it is, it affects the quality of your life, and there's no help, no solution, you just have to put up with it. You ever felt like that? I have. It's just the way that it is. And sometimes we even extend that. We may have learned this somewhere along the way. Sometimes we even think those difficulties are really, really permanent because somehow God's punishing us. Uh-oh. Well, if God's punishing you, that's bad news. Not good. Okay, God never punishes us, by the way. Let me make that clear. That is not a reality, all right? But if we think somehow that there are no solutions, if we think that somehow we're just stuck with whatever difficulties there are, and that those situations are going to lower the quality of our lives, and that there's nothing we can do about it, and we really believe that, then we're going to act on that. And let me give you a heads up here. Guess what? You have now glued yourself to your problem. Because if we believe that we're glued to it, there is nothing that can unglue us from it except ourselves. And so that's the story that we're sticking to, right? That's that bee stuck on that honey jar. I can't get away from it because I have, not because God's sticking me to it, not because somebody else is sticking me to it, because I'm sticking myself to it. Because I believe that that's the way it is. And so we create it. We create a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm going to tell on myself. Yesterday, I entered the world of 21st century technology and actually bought an iPhone, okay? Which was a big step for me. I didn't want one, okay, but I got one. And I'm grateful for technology. Once I get used to it, I like it, and then I think, oh, everybody should have one. You know, it's great, you know. But at first, I admit that it frustrates me. I was never the kind of kid that liked to sit and play games, you know. I just don't like, it's just not my thing. And so this is what I did. I get my iPhone, I go, okay. I take it home, and then I notice that, of course, it's not charged up. So I go and get my old charger from my old phone, and of course, well, y'all already know that story. Okay. That didn't fit. That didn't work. So then, did I look in the box that the iPhone came in? No, I did not. I did not look in that box because I'm convinced that there are no solutions to Anna's technological problems, okay? I believe that with all my heart, okay? So what do? I call up the young man at the store and I say, I didn't tell him my problem. I just said, do you have a charger? I said, I bought this iPhone and I want to know if you have a charger. Well, yeah, but I only have this kind of a charger. Will it fit that phone? Yes. So what do? I get in my car. I drive to the store, I see this device, and in my mind, I'm grumbling. Oh, they just always trying to sell you one more thing, just one more thing, and grumbling. Fortunately, I did not say that. I have enough self-restraint that I can be cordial and not project onto him my distress. But it was close, okay? It was close. All right, so I get there, and I get the thing, and we talk about it. And then I don't know how this came up. Somehow I look at him, and I say, he said, well, there's a charger in your box. I'm like, what box? He said, the one the phone came in. I said, oh, thank you so much. I didn't look in the box. And so I said, thank you, and put that thing back and went home. And lo and behold, my phone is now charged. Okay. When we don't think there's a solution, look at all the problems we create. I created all that. It had nothing to do with anything except me being stuck to that problem. That's what created it. So if we're willing to shift that perception, if we're willing to know that no matter what it is in our personal lives, what it is in the world, no matter how big it seems, what it is in our families' lives or the places we work or volunteer or play, if we just have the concept that there's a solution, what happens is the world changes, doesn't it? That we're no longer stuck to that problem. There's a movie that I really like, and you may have seen it. It came out a few years ago. It's called The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. You see that? I love that movie. And there's a wonderful line in there. There's a young man, it's in India, a young man who inherited this used to be a luxury hotel, I guess, but it was all sort of ramshackle. And he had this vision that he was going to make it again into this wonderful, great, gracious place, this wonderful hotel. Of course, the movie's all about all the problems he was having with that and this, that, and the other thing that happened. And so when one of the guests was complaining to Sonny about the problems, this is what he said. He said, in India, we have a saying that everything will be all right in the end. So if everything is not all right, that means that it is not yet the end. Wow. Yeah. That's the truth, isn't it? It's not yet the end if everything is not yet all right. Because that's the spiritual understanding. That's the spiritual life, is that the depth of life, the result of life, the reality of life, the deep truth of life is that everything is all right, no matter how the circumstances may seem to arrange themselves, because we're always in touch with God. The comfort, the love, the solutions, the next step of growth, the next step of understanding is always available to us 100% of the time. And what needs to shift is our own consciousness, our own awareness, our own willingness to open up and to unstick ourselves from the problem. So, how permanent do we think problems are? Don't need to keep stuck to them, do we? We need to stick ourselves to the solution. The other part of that is, do we know that the problem is not the whole story? The problem's part of the story. We need to talk about the problem. We need to get out the problem. We need to experience the feelings. We need to digest the feelings. And yet, we need to also realize that the whole story, the deep story, the true story, is not the story about our problems. The whole story, the deep story, the true story is the story about how it is that God, working in us, through us, and as us, brought us through that situation to a higher place. That's the real story. And if we haven't gotten to that part of the story, guess what? We haven't finished it yet, have we? That's the real story. I want to share with you a wonderful story in the Gospels. I love this one. It's just so beautiful. It's in the Gospel of John, and it may be very familiar to you. It's the story about the man by the pool of Bethzatha, or Bethsaida. That's the old translation, but Bethzatha. So I want you to hear this, and we'll talk about it. Again, we hear it on a lot of levels. There's no one right interpretation of the Bible. There's lots of levels of understanding. So I'm going to read it and share with you my understanding of it, what it means to me. And then I invite you to reflect on it this week and ponder what this might say to you. What does this story speak to you? Now in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, there's a pool called in Hebrew Bethzatha, which has 5 porticos. And in these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he'd been there for a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" It's a big question, isn't it? Do you want to be made well? And when we understand that at the spiritual level, what we understand is that doesn't always mean a change in the outer circumstances. It doesn't always mean a cure. You know, the ego's always wanting the circumstances to get rearranged. Sometimes they do get rearranged and sometimes they don't. But what does always shift, if we are willing to be made whole, is that our understanding of our situation changes profoundly. And the quality of our lives never stays down. The quality of our lives always transforms and always gets better. And the outer circumstances are what they are. They either shift or they no longer bother us. That's the truth. And so that's what Jesus is saying is basically, do you want to have a better quality of life? Do you want to live from a different place? Do you want to know that God is with you? Do you want to know that you don't have to be miserable? Well, we know what the man said to him, right? The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up," because that was the understanding of that pool, is that an angel would come and stir up the waters, and whoever got in the pool first would get the healing, and the rest of them were just out of luck. So here's this guy for 38 years, you know, by this pool, and he was never the first one in the water. Now in my mind, I don't know about you, but I'm sitting there thinking, well, you should have had a strategy here. You should have laid by the pool and have it just roll in, you know. That's me. That's my ego. That's not God, okay? Strategy, we got to have a strategy here, okay? Yeah, but Jesus was offering him something much better than a strategy. Jesus was offering him a complete change in his understanding. So he said, "Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up, and when I'm making my way down, someone else steps down ahead of me." Wow. That's painful, isn't it? That's painful. Here's this guy for 38 years, hoping for it to get better, but it didn't ever get better. I've been there. You been there? How long, oh Lord, how long? And when we start to have some understanding, what we realize is that what is it that blocks us is the undigested pain. There's nothing unspiritual about emotions. Sometimes that we get a little confused about that. Emotions are a wonderful part of our human life. They are meant to inform us. They're meant to help us connect with what's happening to us in this earthly experience. They give us information. They help us know what's dangerous for us. They help us know what's joyful for us. They help us to navigate life. And they just are joyful. Emotions are wonderful. Even if they're painful, we're alive. We're feeling. But what happens to us, sometimes we can be overwhelmed, or maybe we didn't learn much about our emotions and we can get stuck, right? Those emotions can be overwhelming, and then they get stuck, and they're just sort of sitting there, just sort of sitting there. And that blocks us off. God's never leaves us, but it blocks us off from our awareness of God. So when we're in that suffering, when it feels like we can't move forward, it's some undigested emotion. And we get to have compassion for ourselves, compassion for other people about that, and do whatever it is that we need to do to digest that so that we can be cleared, so that we can have the energy freed up, so that we can move forward. So this is what happens next in that story. Jesus wasn't buying any of this, right? Because Jesus knew about this stuff, so he wasn't buying this, that this guy was hopeless, that there were no solutions. Jesus, when we look in the Gospels, Jesus symbolizes in us that Christ's presence within, God individualized within us. So just as Jesus was in this story, the Christ is in us saying the same thing. The Christ in us is saying, do you want to be made well? Do you want to have your wholeness? Do you want to know God's with you? And we say, oh, but you don't know how bad it was and how much I've tried. I can't get anywhere. And Jesus, that Christ says, yeah, I know. I know it's hard. Here, let me hold you. Feel it, cry, rage, get it out, digest it. And now let's open the door to what's next. So Jesus said to him, stand up, take your mat and walk. And at once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and he began to walk. Wow, powerful. What is that? What is that? That's that experience in each of us that when we are willing, we can go forward because that Christ energy is there, because God is there, and that hope is there, and that possibility is there. And so whatever it was that felt like it had been holding us down, whatever it was that had been lowering the quality of our life, we can say, I don't need that anymore. And we can go forward into a new ending to that story. We go forward into the next part of the story. That the story doesn't stop with the problem. The rest of the story is how God brought me through that situation. And wow, isn't life amazing? Wow, isn't it amazing that I am one with that presence and that power of life? Wow, I now have a wonderful quality of life. And I look forward to more. And my circumstances are whatever my circumstances are, but I am greater than those circumstances, and I'm living in great quality of life. You know, when we understand that what difficulties really are, it changes everything too. Sometimes it feels like difficulties in life sort of come out of the blue, right? Where'd they come from? Oh, they just landed on me somewhere. I don't know. They flew out of nowhere and landed in my life. Oh, really? That's so interesting. Okay? Or sometimes we go way to the other side and take too much responsibility for them. Oh, I created this because I had negative thinking. Well, kind of, but not really. That's half truth. That's a half truth in metaphysics. So let's see what's really going on. The real thing that's going on is that when we're having difficulties, it truly is good news. It's wonderful news. I have a reputation that if you tell me you break your leg, I'm going to say, that is fabulous. That is so fantastic. Thank you for telling me that. I'm so glad. Okay? People say, I don't tell her stuff anymore because she'll say, oh, that's wonderful. Okay. I also have compassion. Okay. So how can I say that in a real way? Because when we are having difficulties in our lives, the true spiritual man, it doesn't take away that it's hard or difficult or we're upset about it. That's okay. We can have feelings. But what's going on at the spiritual level is that we're just like a little chick pecking out of that egg. That the Christ within us, our awareness of the Christ within us is expanding. And so it's breaking down all those old thought forms that we had and all the old ways that we had ourselves attached to people, places, and things. What about when we're having problems at work? It's not comfortable, it's not pleasant, But you know what? It's an opportunity because somehow the Christ in us is expanding, and somehow that work situation or how we're relating to it doesn't fit anymore because we have gotten larger. Our talents are expanding, or maybe we do need to learn some new things about how to interact with people. Maybe there's some negative behaviors we need to let go of. Who knows? So one way or the other, the good news is we're growing and we're needing to make an adjustment in our circumstances. No matter what it is that our awareness of that Christ presence has gotten larger, and the old ways, that old shell that we had is no longer the right size. It's gotten too small for us. Now, it depends on whose perspective you're looking from, right? If you're looking from the perspective of the shell, it's a disaster when you've got problems. The shell is like, oh, I'm broken. The chicken doesn't need me anymore. Oh well. Okay? But from the perspective of the chicken, it's like, boy, I'm glad I'm out of there. And I can go forward and live my life. So one way or the other, we're adjusting those circumstances because we're larger, we're bigger, and we are coming to interact in a new way with our own thoughts, with our own emotions, with our own circumstances. And that's always good news. So, the question, we all have a story, right? And we all stick to them stories. The question is, which story am I sticking to? The story about my problems only? Or am I sticking to the story that is the whole story, the true story, the deep story, which is the story about how God in, as, and through me has brought me through this situation into a greater level of living. It's my story. I'm sticking to it. Let's pray. Mother, Father, God, we're so grateful today to be aware of you, to be aware of your love and your presence, your comfort, your care for us, and for this whole beautiful world. Truly, we know that you're right here for us, and we're grateful to be more aware of that in this moment than perhaps we ever have been before, and we see it growing. We know this is the truth, and we affirm it in the name and through the power of the living, loving Christ and our brother and our way shower, Jesus the Christ. Amen.